Hello, my name is George. This is GLLR Cars. Welcome to the channel. Today we're talking the 2020 BMW 530i. The BMW 530i is the four-cylinder version of BMW's 5 Series. And I, because it uses the iDrive, it had the X on it, it will be the four-wheel drive version. So this one is two-wheel drive and it's a rear-wheel drive. The 530 means four-cylinder version. There's a 540, there's a six-cylinder version, and there is a 550 like the one in the fleet, which is an 8-cylinder version. And I had reservations about driving this car being a four-cylinder engine, and I will show you during the driving part of it that those reservations were pretty much gone. This car, having reviewed the 2016 model, this car is 4 years newer, yet by looking at it, the differences aren't that much. A few things that jump out are the front grills here have the grills that when it does need more air, they do open up to allow more air, but they normally close when they don't, and it makes the vehicle more aerodynamic. The front and the lines are pretty much unchanged from the 2016 model. There is a subtle difference where the hood had couple of other, you see these lines that curve here, a couple of other lines that were in the middle. They eliminated that. In the side, it does have this vent here that is a little bit different from how they set it up before, but the lines are the same. Another thing that changed is the door handle. The lock unlock button, or the lock button, is here on the corner rather than on the top. Even the wheels are pretty much identical to the ones from earlier models up to from 2015 and 2016. Pretty much look the same. The overall design of the car is excellent. If you do look for differences between the 2016, 17, 18, and 19 model, they're so subtle that you have to look at things such as this. Right in the corner where these lines come in, I don't know if the camera will capture that, but there is a very subtle line that comes and curves down here. Another design that they have there and there, right there. So if you have to look for those tiny little things, you're pretty much almost splitting hairs. So the car is pretty much, for I guess the untrained eye, undistinguishable from the earlier models, where I believe the changes are significant, or the changes are bigger and noticeable, or changes inside the vehicle, and inside of the vehicle is what we'll see it. But let's start with the trunk. Starting with the trunk, we have a trunk that again has pretty much unchanged from before. The capacity and the size of the trunk is pretty much the same. If I were to guess, maybe about 3 golf bags in there, and the buttons are the same place where you expect them to open and close and lock the doors. I said with that one subtle difference there. So let's look in the inside. When you first look at the layout, the seats themselves look identical. I think the designs on the lines, and again, there's different options here. This car is not option with all of the options that are out there, but that is a little bit subtle. The layout of the front, the one thing that stands out is the infotainment screen used to be embedded inside the dash. Now it kind of sticks out above the dash. And let me get inside to show you. Probably the most significant part is that instrument cluster. So starting the car against the buttons where you expect it to press the brake and press the button. The one below here is to disable the automatic engine off whenever you come to a traffic light or whatnot. So I like to disable that for now. But again, this instrument cluster being significantly redone, where we don't have just a quick point, the 2016 model that I reviewed did have LCD screen, but there were these rings that were on each side that were made out of metal, and the screens would kind of fit within those patterns, and it almost looked like a traditional look. I do like this because it allows you to make configurations based on software and not hardware. So if BMW needs to make improvements to it, it's all in the software, right? So they put the maps in the middle. You can change that. The digital display for speedometer is here in the middle, and it also has the analog look. The tachometer is also analog. They flipped it the other way, so it opens up the view, and you can put things like trip computer and whatnot. Temperature gauge and fuel gauge also done with a screen, even though it has an analog look to it. I think that it is a significant improvement from what BMW had been, what I would say, lagging behind from some of the other automakers who had already taken significant steps to modernize at least the interior of the car. One thing to point out though, the different modes here, there's Sports, Comfort, and Eco Pro, actually change the screen, the instrument cluster view. This is the Sports view, which is a little bit more aggressive. The fonts get a little bit bigger, it's redder. The Comfort view is a little bit more subtle, the fonts are not as bright. And then the Eco Pro, where it turns bluish on one side, and again, it's a very good job of the different settings to show you. And by the way, the infotainment screen will show you where you're at as well, to remind you by just looking at your instrument cluster the setup that you have. Next point is the instrument cluster. The infotainment screen. So the infotainment screen is touchscreen. I know that many other folks have reviewed it. You can swipe between the different apps. You can open up an app and expand that. You can also use the iDrive wheel to control it as well. So again, nothing significantly bigger, but just subtle differences. I reviewed a 2019 Model 3 Series that had pretty much what we see here, but it was not the touchscreen. So evolutionary is probably the right word of saying what some of these changes are. This button right here is for all of the drive safety features to be either turned on or off all at once. So you can individually change them and turn them on or turn them off, and that green halo will remind you of that. In terms of the shortcut buttons and the climate controls, those are fairly unchanged. These buttons though are a little bit more glossier, and it does have like humps and peaks, so when you slide your finger over it, you can see right here what's been assigned and what hasn't been assigned, and you know what those shortcuts are. The other thing that has changed is this console opening part here, which is, instead of a flip door, it's a sliding door. You got your cup holders here, and USB and 12-volt chargers here, and then if you option that, you can actually have an induction charger for your phone as well. This center console here is no longer the press down button. It's only like a press in button to flip it open, and you can see there that the amount of storage there is not significant, but it's something that will fulfill your basic needs. First impressions, if I look at the acceleration, it has very good punch, and this surprises me because this car is a 4-cylinder car that, although it is a twin turbo 4-cylinder, it produces 248 horsepower. So I didn't expect at least the level of torque, the level of punch that I get when I punch it. It does punch you fairly quickly, even though it's turbocharged. It's very fast. I would probably say less than a quarter second. I feel that punch right away. So they tuned this engine to perform significantly well. I didn't expect a 4-cylinder engine, such a large sedan like this, would perform this well. So in terms of acceleration, it does check that box. Again, don't expect a performance level acceleration like the 5 Series that comes with the V8, like the 550, but this 530 with a 4-cylinder It is more than adequate for someone who likes performance, and significantly good for someone who normally doesn't expect performance. If I have it on comfort mode, it does feel a little bit softer, but right now I'm driving it in sports mode and it does feel very tight. The feel of the steering wheel, by the way, is been improved from the review of the video that I made on the 2016 model. That's actually part of the fleet. And if I were to look at how they try to make sure that that driving experience would continue to improve, there is no one thing obvious. It is all about the subtle changes. Like, one common complaint that I've had is that the feel of the steering wheel was a little bit softer than, say, a Mercedes product. It was more in line with like an Audi product, but seeing how they've improved it to, I would probably say that if you look at a 2016 or earlier version of a Mercedes E-Class, the 2020 BMW 5 Series has caught up with that steering feel. In order to make an apples to apples comparison, I would have to compare this with a 2020 E-Class. So that would be the litmus test, because those cars are known for having very good positive feedback on the steering. So that checks that box. Performance checks. In terms of the creature comforts, they probably are fairly unchanged from the earlier models, like the 2016 that I have as part of the fleet and that I've reviewed. But the biggest changes on the 2020 BMW 5 Series are related to the upgraded tech. And the biggest change of them all is stares right in your face when you first drive it, and that is the instrument cluster. If I point at the instrument cluster right here, they basically went with an LCD screen, and although it does show these analog gauges that are somewhat in angles, they did flip them so that it opens up the center for doing things such as maps, and putting also a digital speedometer as well, and does allow you to change the configuration to have, based on the driving mode, the various colors and things that I've talked about. So that is the biggest change. The other one is the related to the screen that has the infotainment and the maps. It has an interface that is now touchscreen, and because it is a touchscreen interface, it gives you more options, and it's got, I would probably say, easier to navigate menus. The one thing that BMW prides itself on is on the driving experience. Many cars can put toys and bells and whistles on it, and in fact, BMW is not known as the one with the best toys and whistles, but their driving experience is what really makes the difference here. I just was making a turn there. I was making a U-turn. I'm making another turn here just to see what it feels when you make a turn. One other thing that I noticed when I slow the car down, the alternator, the battery charging is not as obvious as earlier models. And what I mean with obvious is that you don't feel like it's slowing your car down when you let go of the accelerator as much as the other models, to use a little bit of that regenerative kinetic energy of the car slowing down and using some of that energy to charge the battery. Well, it's a lot more subtle here. You can barely tell. And as I just did a couple of turns just to feel the not just the turning radius, because I had done a U-turn earlier, but just how even with one hand here on the steering wheel and then just doing 90-degree turns, it is very positive, it's very easy. And even though I have the car in sports mode, which is the tightest feel on the steering wheel, it is still very positive. I'm trying to do another one here just to see. Yeah, and there's very little body rollover. Again, I'm not testing this on a track or doing this at high speeds. I'm just using this as you're cruising around, practical speeds, you're in your neighborhood, and you want to know what the car feels. And it is a very, very big difference. And that is what makes the driving experiences pleasurable for a car such as this. That is what you pay for. Not just the luxury in it, but the engineering behind it. So here, I'm just gonna turn here and just give it a little gas. It is very responsive. And I would probably say for someone who's not looking for performance, just that subtle punch that you need when you're changing lanes or need to merge into a highway, or you're just at zero and you want to just have a little bit of that pleasure of just hitting the gas a little bit and getting a little bit of feedback, it is more than adequate. The other difference that I noticed with the 2020 model on the 5 Series is the 5 Series is a fairly large car, and I didn't expect for the car to feel as nimble as it does. So it does have a nimble feel to it. And when I slow down or I accelerate or I turn corners, especially the fact there's a 4-cylinder engine, it does feel lighter. And this may be as a result of better steering feel, better torque at the low RPM range, and even though the car is not any lighter, it just makes it feel lighter and nimble, and that is definitely a plus. Many people don't buy the larger cars because they feel heavy and sluggish. This is anything but that. So very good job that BMW has done to stay to try to separate itself from some of the other performance vehicles, even though this is a very competitive just segment of vehicles. By staying up with the competition, they're doing a pretty good job. Now, the segment of vehicles of luxury sedans have been eroded by luxury SUVs or SUVs in general, but no market trend will continue perpetually. So this trend of SUVs being very popular at some point will subside, and when that happens, we will see that those who invested in 4-door sedans like this will stay ahead of the competition, and that these will begin to pick up, and these are very good sellers for not just BMW, but just pretty much all of the other car makers that make a car in this segment. The last thing to talk about the driving experience is the visibility. The visibility is pretty much unchanged from the earlier models. So BMW is very well known for not making too many changes, too many drastic changes from model to model. Their mindset is that you try not to fix what's not broken. So the changes are very subtle. They're more like evolutionary changes, not revolutionary. So as such, if you look around, the view around of the car all the way around is excellent, and this is because it has been excellent. My view, this is my eye view right here, and it is high even though I have the chair all the way down, and it is a comfortable view out the window, over the dash, over the steering wheel, and all the controls are where you need them to be, so no complaints there. So after driving it and seeing what it was like, knowing that the car has a very good feel with the road and that the power was more than adequate, I would not believe that a car maker putting a 4-cylinder engine on a car of this size would have been a good idea, but BMW pulled it off, and it is more than adequate, at least for my taste, when I'm like looking for performance. For someone that doesn't look for performance and they just want a car for cruise around, then this is actually very fast. So the driving experience, the looks, the luxury that comes with it, even one that is optioned like this car, it is a good value. One would say, how can a $53,000 MSRP starting price on a car like this be a good value? If you start counting all the features and you start driving with all the features, and then you get used to all those features, and then you go to a car that doesn't have it, that's when you truly appreciate the value of a car that does have all the features. And because many people do prefer to pay for those features, that's why cars like these are very popular. The BMW 530 is a car that I would recommend, not just because it's a well-respected brand that's been around and they make good cars, but because every time that you drive one, it reminds you why these cars are such a great value, and why these cars are such a great driving experience, and why, for whatever reason that you buy them, you enjoy owning them. And that's probably one of the most important things about car ownership. It's not about going from point A to point B. If that's truly the reason why you get a car, then you really don't need to get a car. You can get a Lyft or an Uber, or take the bus, or even ride a bicycle. The real reason why car folks get a car is because if you're going to go from point A to point B, you want to do it in style. You want to do it in a manner of having something that you can be proud of, and something that you can enjoy, something that you can look forward to. How about that? If you have a long commute, yet you still look forward to driving, then you know that you really truly enjoy driving, and you truly enjoy the car that you drive. My name is George. This is GLLR Cars, and as always, drive safe.